Hello. Like Ananya said, I'm here to share a story with you. I'll introduce myself first. I'm Seemin Suleri. I'm head of engineering for a company called 288 Group. And before I start sharing the story with you, I want to introduce you to the company first and what we do and who we are. So 288 Group, I would say it's not a tech giant. Technology is not what we sell. We're largely an e-commerce based company in the collectibles, selling collectibles. 250 employees, around about that. 35 of them are engineers. So even though we are an SME, not a huge company, we do have a huge engineering department by those standards. And it's a private family-owned business. 40 million plus annual sales, so very strong trading history for over 76 years. 85% of our customers are online overall. There are a number of brands that come under the umbrella of the 288 house company. These are some of our brands which sell collectibles. So Westminster Collection and Westminster International, Chain Checker, Collectology and CPM, and if you are into collectibles, go and explore those websites. And also, we have another business which has got nothing to do with collectibles at all, which is called Sitters. It's a babysitting agency, and it tells you kind of the nature of the company a little bit. And that company came into being, that brand, when our chairman and his wife were looking for babysitting. So if for today, especially for AOTB attendees, if you want to book babysitting, you can use AOTB 2022 as your referral code, and you'll get a discount. But anyway, so this is kind of who we are. Just to give you an idea of, it's a kind of multi-brand company. It's a diverse set of brands as well. Largely, like I said, dealing with e-commerce systems. But to start the story, I want you to go back in time, into these times, into the 80s. And I used to own one of these things, so I don't know whether any of you recognize any of that. So the company's journey really into technology started in the 80s when they wanted to automate one of their systems. And there was a strong feeling that we don't want to outsource anything. We want to build everything in-house. So that is kind of the mentality the company has always had. They wanted to build these systems that were fit for purpose and do whatever the company wanted them to do. And this is kind of one of the first machines that were actually, this is a real picture of the office in the 80s. And one of the machines they actually used, and the contractor or would come in and install the new program, and they'll just use that on that machine. But that's really kind of tells us that the company from the very beginning, when they started using these automated systems, were invested in building in-house systems for moving the business forward. And obviously time went by, and offline presence wasn't just deemed to be enough, and we wanted to move into the modern world, and we had some sort of a web presence for Sitters, but largely kind of moving traffic towards telephone stuff at that point. Back in 2004, we had some sort of a websites, but not really, I would say, what you would call a modern system to deal with modern online traffic. So, like just over a decade ago, about 2011, an opportunity was kind of foreseen, where the company kind of visualized that they wanted to go into this new market and explore the online customer base and expand the systems in that space. So there was this opportunity because the company was again fully invested in giving the opportunity to the people to build these systems. I want you to visualize this world where you as an engineer, if you have an engineering background, you have been given unlimited power and autonomy over what you want to build. You can choose the tech you want. You can build the team you want. And you have to do it quickly because they want to get to the market very quickly. And this is an enormous amount of trust that is being put in the engineering teams to be able to do that. But apart from in startup cultures there are some challenges, but because the company was well established way before 2011, some of those challenges weren't there. For example, you didn't have to generate revenue because revenue was still being generated. You had the budget behind you to make those decisions, and the company was backing you to build those systems. So the culture for innovation was ready. The company was putting all the trust in engineering, and that was our time to shine as engineering department. So we kind of embarked on the journey to build a system, and we put something together. And what we put together looked something like this. So it's kind of fit for purpose-ish. I mean, it looks like a house, but I think that it kind of built the presence that we wanted to build. But even back in that time, the technology we chose was about 10 years old, because the decision we made was to go with what was comfortable rather than what was right. And we didn't see the nature of the business and the growth it was, and the way it was expanding, and what it might need for innovation and advancement. And we just built what we were comfortable with. The result was that we started off with having no version control, because version control is for losers, and we were FTPing on like a boss, and so that's the way to go. And I think that eventually we brought in version control, and after quite a few years, I would say, into that journey, we didn't have any test. I mean, we didn't have manual test, let alone automated test, because that's a waste of time. And so whatever we built was very unstable, and it was a bit of a problem, because whatever we couldn't reliably tell the business that they could run a campaign without everything crashing down. And as you can see, you can't really build extension on any structures like those, and with really shaky foundations, you can't really imagine anything. And I think for a business that had put everything into us as an engineering team, I think it's fair to say it was slightly disappointing. But I think this is something, because it is somewhat fit for purpose, the realization of how poorly it was designed didn't come immediately. And I do say that when we are given this opportunity, and I like to talk about demons, and one of the demons that can hit us when we have those ideal circumstances and autonomy and everything going for us, and this budget behind us, and this company that is rooting for us, we can make choices like that. We can go for what is comfortable rather than what is right, and not analyze the technology that is right in front of us, and make mistakes to the detriment eventually of the business that is backing us. So that is kind of all about the code, but I really want to emphasize on something else today as well, which in my mind is perhaps our biggest crime of that decade, which is what we did with our people. As an engineering team that, again, a department which was forming, and this new trust and new funding that was going into the department, it is very easy for, again, another demon to take over us, because you think, well, I've got all the control now because the business putting the trust in me, I know what to do, and that's it. You do not share that control. You don't pass on that autonomy to your teams, and you have a very command and control structure. And I think that it is very easy to fall into the trap of considering yourself as the translator and the ultimate translator of between the business and the teams. And that is exactly what happened with us. Our engineering leadership was run in a way where we thought as engineering leaders that we knew all the answers. And it was kind of an interesting two-way story, because to the engineers who wanted to talk to the business to understand what the new requirements were and build these latest and greatest systems, we said to them, well, the business really doesn't know what they want because they don't understand the technology. And we told the business that the engineers were like sensitive gazelles. If you disturb them, they will leave. So the business was too worried about having direct communication with the engineers, which meant that everything was fed through to the teams as Chinese whispers, which meant obviously technology was a problem, but what we were building was not what was asked. And so we ended up in delivering things often late, not communicating to the business about what we wanted to do, what they wanted out of us, and then often the thing that we delivered wasn't the thing they asked for. There was another thing we did with our developers, which all the devs would love, is that we never took their feedback into account because we knew better as leaders of that engineering team. So we would hold feedback sessions and people would raise their points about how they want to make improvements, and we'll nod along and leave them on the PowerPoint slide that was presented until the next retro. And the problem with that is people stop talking because people are not stupid. They know that they're not being heard. And again, another thing that can attack us in that time is we kind of fall into the trap of thinking that we know best. The people on the ground, we stop listening to them and we stop interacting with them and they stopped talking to us. If you were an engineer working in that decade, in that team, and I was one of the lucky ones, if you wanted to suggest something, for example, if you wanted to suggest a small thing such as changing the naming convention for unit test, which you should have all autonomy over, it would be a department-wide conversation with critique done on every single aspect of your suggestion. You would spend hours defending your point, and in the end, the select few would tell you that you didn't communicate it well enough, so present it again in 3 weeks' time, only to find out it was thrown out after 3 attempts. And I don't know what it does to the morale of the person who's presenting it. At the end, you think, well, I don't give a shit. I think this is kind of where you ended up with, because you think, well, I'm just going to put up with it because that's the only way I can survive in this. We also didn't put any training and development plans, because obviously who needs them? And the people who started with us as juniors would stay with us for 4 years, come out of the other side as juniors. We didn't introduce them, we didn't challenge them, we didn't throw new technology at them, we didn't explore new ways of training and developing them to opening up innovation or anything like that. We just told them, you've got half an hour a week to do some Pluralsight. And that was it. That must be enough. And the thing with that is that at the end, we did disservice to the people who worked for us. These absolutely amazing, talented people we didn't look after. So as an engineering team, we were failing. And you can see the side of the business from this aspect where they had put all of their trust and all of their energy and faith and, well, money behind us. And we weren't delivering. We had zero credibility in terms of whatever we wanted to present to them. And kind of many of our engineers left us along the way. But the business obviously tolerated it for a long enough time with this unpredictability, and with COVID and everything else and the speed of the world, they wanted to move into the new direction and wanted to move, innovate and be ahead of the game, ahead of the competition. But you can't do that if none of your systems are delivering. So there was a cutoff point where they've just had enough, and they wanted to kind of put their foot down and say, look, we're going to take back some of that trust we gave you. And I think that as tolerance goes, pretty much a decade is a long enough period to tolerate anything like that. And so kind of I re-entered the picture around a couple of years ago, right when the business was putting its foot down. I re-entered because I worked as an engineer there before, got fed up, left, and I was kind of contacted to come back again. And I went back again because I loved the company and I loved the way we were treated by the business themselves and how much, and I knew the potential, so I wanted to give it another try. So went back in there, but this time round, I was looking after the engineering teams because they wanted to put a new team together, or for me to analyze what was there in the first place. And you'd think, you know, best part of the decade, this is what we've done. We've absolutely shattered all of their hopes. We haven't delivered. Whatever systems we built is just falling apart. And now they want to build the future. You'd think, how do you think they would have behaved? How do you think that business would have behaved? What did they choose to do? They choose to put their faith back into the engineering teams. They didn't just say, go out, all of you. We've had enough. They started to look into it and they wanted a fresh perspective into rebuilding what was already there. And this is what I think sets us apart from anybody else and anywhere else that I've seen, is the faith that is put into the people to say, you can get your house in order. And this is where I believe that the biggest challenge comes in, because I went in with kind of fresh perspective and looked into the system and then thought, you know, I didn't create this mess. I don't know why do I have to clear it. And this is very easy to fall into that trap. And I would say that is another demon that would hit you when you have responsibility. And I'm sure that there are many people who walked into jobs looking into mess they didn't create, and now they had this enormous responsibility of not only clearing out the mess, but delivering on top for the business that deserves nothing less after years and years of their faith in engineering. And so how do you deal with that situation? Because you know that you didn't create it, so it's very easy to fall into this victim mentality. And I would say that is the biggest demon that I experienced in that time, when I thought, well, that's not, why is it my problem? But I would like to mention a quote by a leadership guru, Alan Willett, in his book, Lead with Speed. He says, whatever came before, whether it was caused by your direct actions or not, the day you accepted the job, you accepted its history and its future. There is absolutely no excuses. So what you do in order to understand and begin your journey is you own the chaos that is around you. It is your mess. It is nobody else's. You go in and you apologize to the business for the awful treatment they've had for the last decade, and ensure and make sure that you tell them things are going to change, and you are going to make sure that things are changing. So some of the things that are challenging in that is that you are a fresh pair of eyes. You are going and talking to the business. So what I found very helpful, and some of you might do if you find yourself in similar situations, is to find yourself, equip yourself with insights and data. Talk to people. First thing is you need to find out those gems that were kind of ignored all this time, and the people who have got enormous potential. You've got to seek them out and find out and have those conversations, because that's where real value, that's where your wisdom to success would be. And I think that's kind of where the whole turning point of the story is. Connect with the people, and I believe that if we forget about every single methodology, and I know that people can be so specific about how to implement one methodology or the other, and they can get carried away with that. And they forget about the true spirit of Agile, which is going back to the people, connecting with them, finding out, interacting with them, finding out, having conversations. So connect with them, having conversations, finding out what their strengths are, weaknesses are, what their motivations are, what gets them going, what are their fears, and then combining that knowledge. And then also presenting it back to the business and telling them what your strengths and weaknesses are with honesty and transparency, and figuring out together with them about how you might be able to address them. In our case, we had amazing potential in our teams, but they have never been exposed to proper training and development before. So we put them on kind of like a boot camp. But we got a massive buy-in from the business to be able to do that. We took them out of their day-to-day work and put them on a training boot camp for 3 or 4 months. And it was enormously beneficial. And then we spoke to people about their feedback. We have weekly feedback coming into the teams, and we have our retros. But the point of the retro is that if there is an action that is taken, it is the responsibility of your line manager and your department manager and your manager's manager to be able to do that quickly. And you are held accountable. There are no promises that we make and we don't fulfill. We do it very, very quickly. And the teams are able to see that we are able to do right by them. The next thing we did is to establishing the culture, and I would say culture is not a singular responsibility of the management of the place. Culture is what people bring, what people are, and what they do. So you get the right people in the room who are allies in your line of thinking and who want to do, who share that vision and who share the same belief, and they want to do right by the business and the opportunity. And you develop that culture, and they take you to the next level. And the other thing we did is to establish, I guess, from the very beginning, because back in the 80s, the business, and in that phase, the business has a very close relationship with the engineering teams, and the engineering teams were right on top of what we wanted, what the business wanted them to do. And therefore, it was just very easy for us to measure the success and to understand what they wanted and then to deliver. And so the delivery was excellent and the systems were reliable. Obviously, we had put ourselves in a position where that wasn't the case, which meant we had to go back to the way we were before and work closely with the business. But in order to do that, we need to understand how the business functions. How has it developed in different areas? What are the pain points and what are the desires of the business to establish in certain areas, and how can we achieve that and work with them to establish that. And the next thing is reconnecting with the customers. So collaboration and connecting with the customers. Again, some of the principles that any methodology in Agile is based on, but these things are often forgotten because we get prescriptive with our methodologies and get too specific about how certain ceremonies could be done, and we could spend ages just debating that. But the true spirit we forget, which is about this collaboration with the customer and re-establishing the relationship with them. You develop processes as well, but processes come secondary. These relationships with your people and your customers come primary. And they kind of became the heart and soul of what we did and what we're doing to move forward. And then we're building this whole new world together with our business, and this is where the business is fully aligned with what engineering teams are trying to do, and they fully understand that. And I guess it's important to also recognize that it is a journey. We started off by doing this a couple of years ago, and we've seen massive improvements in the way the business has been able to see the outcomes, as well as the way the morale of the teams have changed, and the way we are now working together, and the whole culture of the place has evolved from where we were before. I also want to show you a little bit about how it has impacted the teams. So I asked them about the impact of it and how they felt working in that. So I thought I'll share with you a little bit about that. So this is some pictures from our teams, and we just, it looks like we probably just have beer and attend conferences, but we do a lot of work as well. But we took a heat map, a word map of how they were feeling working within the department and in that particular quarter that they were aiming to deliver stuff for. And I was really pleased that excited and optimistic were the highest chosen words, because when I spoke to the teams before, in the beginning of that journey, those were certainly not the things that people were talking about. I also like to mention some of the things that that people say about us when they work with us. And these are just some of the comments. We take feedback, like I said, very seriously, and we do fortnightly feedback sessions, as well as there is a department feedback session where they can actually say anything and ask anything, and they can ask the question to the head of the department, which is me, and then I have to answer and tell them what is the resolution. And it is an extremely open conversation, and I was surprised by some of the things that were raised there, because I was immensely proud of the stuff that people were able to discuss in those things, anything that is bothering them that they think could be improved, and we've been able to make massive improvements based on that. So some of the stuff that they mention is management is always taking an interest in how we are progressing. I love that we're being creative, driving innovation, encouraging learning, and building quality products. There is no red tape or bureaucracy, and this is an important point, because I believe that what we fundamentally changed within engineering is that you are allowed to just go and do the job you know best how to. And as engineers, I know that our pet peeve has always been that we are the experts and we are told how to do what people who know the thing less than what we do. And therefore, we have to always justify and convince the people who don't really understand the domain about why we are right and they don't understand. And I think the red tape and bureaucracy, by taking it away and putting the power back into the teams, it might feel uncomfortable, because as management, as higher management, I can understand that one of the demons is that you keep control, because you think, well, what's the point of me? If they have got all the control and autonomy over building things and they can make decisions, then if I'm not even approving anything, then what's the point of me being there in the first place? But I would say that if that is your demon, and if that is something that affects you, then we have to consider as engineering leaders our role to be the oil that keeps the engine going. You might not be the cog anymore, because if you have gone up from being an engineer, you would miss that. You will miss the thrill of building something and of designing something. And it will haunt you sometimes, and you will want to just get your hands dirty and go in there and ask them what they're building, even though you don't know really a lot of level of detail. But you have to find comfort that you are doing an important part too. You are important in that whole picture. And if you weren't oiling the machine, it wouldn't run it as efficiently. And again, we talk a lot about impediments in Agile. If you are unable to remove impediments effectively for your team, then in my mind, you're completely useless management in engineering. And this is something we have seen so many times. And I've seen in smaller companies, in larger companies, where there are managers who will, you have to get 52 signatures to get a build approved out to this world. I mean, we're living in times where speed to market is extremely important, and we have to make these things streamlined. If you are an engineering leader who's not actively working to make that happen, then you've got to think about a different career in my mind. And also you have to ask yourself at the end of the day, why do all that? What keeps you going? Because a lot of the times you will hit hurdles. Because remember, it's not just an isolated system where you went in. There were a lot of technology that was running. There were people who were comfortable with that technology. There were people there who probably don't know about Agile or don't want to know about Agile, don't want to even hear about another way of working. So there are several hurdles in the way. And then you think, well, what keeps you going? Because why don't you just find an easier job somewhere else where people are going to understand Agile and your team will be behind you and you wouldn't have to build everything from scratch? Why not do that? And in my mind, you do it for love, as cheesy as it sounds. I would say that you do it for the love of the people you work for the love of the people you work with, for the product that you're building, and what you'll be, the change that you're making. And if you are driven by something which is as pure as just the love of it, then you're unstoppable. And you can create the changes that can create these new teams, create a new culture, and then enable them to deliver and do the job they know how. And then the role you can play is get out of their way and make sure everything else gets out of their way as well as they make progress. And that is it. Thank you very much for listening. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
For a second so that everybody can hear you.
That's right. Hi, I was just going to say, did you end up starting again, which I know a lot of people like to do when they get reintroduced to something, or did you actually keep the code and work with it?
I'll just take that one. All right, so I think we are working in a hybrid world in that the existing the systems are there. We are improving them, so we've been able to make major improvements in that to keep up to speed with our competition. However, we are building the newer systems as well. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, because we have got the ability to still innovate in the space, but with technological limitations depending on the technology. Because, as I said, there wasn't enough of an opportunity for us to expand some of those things. So just being able to improve them. So we are constantly making improvements. So we have dedicated team who's doing that, and we have got dedicated teams who are building these new systems in a greenfield way from scratch, in a much, much faster way, to get the business to this new, fresh, innovative space where they want to go.
Question?
Hi, thanks for that. When you sort of came back and were heading up the team, were you sort of given time to stop and change things up? I know you had like the kind of 6 key points that you sort of introduced and wanted to work with, but was there did you have the bandwidth to do that? Could you take a step back? Or was it just you had to kind of try and push all that on and with demons?
I think in truth, it was all systems go. Because the thing is that the business had a huge ambition that they wanted to get into these new systems as quickly as possible, and I completely understand that. As you know, we were working with older tech when we started a decade ago, so you can imagine it was even a couple of decades old by the time I joined the team. So it was already, I would say, late by those standards. So we had no time to waste, so we went straight in.
Thank you. Hi. How did you change the culture of your senior team when you got back? Because if they had a decade of things not being successful, how did you get them to then trust you and allow you to make those decisions?
So there are two kind of, I would say, two distinct relationships, collaborative relationships there. One is the new relationship we were forming with the business, where we were kind of showing them. So this is the first time they were seeing in over a decade the real data coming through. So one of the things we were able to do is get metrics in terms of telling them how quickly were we building things, what is our predictability, how long would you have to wait on average, and what are these bugs, what is the rate and all that. Before that, there was just absolutely vagueness about anything, and they couldn't see any data. So one relationship that we managed to mend was with the business itself by making things transparent. The other thing is that there were some key changes. So when I said the business kind of put their foot down, there were people who were let go. It wasn't like go in and actually wipe out the whole space. However, there were some key people who just didn't want to adapt the change. It wasn't for them. And I think you kind of understand that, because they are too comfortable with that technology. They are responsible for those decisions, and therefore they just don't think it's for them, and they also don't believe in it for real reasons. So out of respect as well, it just wasn't for them. So, for all good reasons, you part ways with them. It's not that they are pushed out, but it's just the path is now very different to what they are familiar with. And I guess as we progress in this journey as well, we find out a lot of people join you, a lot of people leave you as well, because I believe that's how a culture is formed, because some people are just uncomfortable with some of the things, and that's fine, that's right by them. They go and find out, and I know that in technology world, there is no shortage of opportunity now, so people can find out what actually fits for them.
Just a second.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, looking back at your time when you joined your team again, up until now, is there anything that you can think of that you might have done differently?
That's a really good question. I guess the only thing I would say is that I think that I could have been more patient. And I would always say that because and my team sat there, that's why they're laughing. Because I have this innate impatience in my built in. And I think that I can't just rest until it's done kind of thing. So I think I could have taken it easy. That is something I do think, easy on myself a bit. That would be my one thing.
Hello.
Hello.
So I like what you said about the training, the boot camp that you did. So that was a one-off task. How about the training going forward? How's that been handled?
So it depends on what we develop is objectives. So we work with every individual for their training and development objectives, and you have 2 to 3 objectives that you have to meet, that are assigned to you every quarter. And these are not project objectives, these are actually your objectives. It might be something you want to work on, you want to explore, and then we facilitate it. You also identify with your team lead or your line manager how you would like to progress them, and we identify the training and development. So for example, people in software engineering sometimes struggle to do presentations, for example. And some people might want to do very well in that, but they just feel they've never been, you can't put them in front of a plural site course and say, yep, now you know how to present, because that doesn't work. So the way we did was we kind of looked at different approaches towards training and development. One of the things we did is to get them coaching. So they have dedicated coaching, which is an independent person from the company. We pay for it as a company, and that person has got sessions with them to improve that skill. That is not only going to benefit them, but benefit us as well in the long term. And I would also like to highlight that a lot of the people who kind of fall into the engineering management positions are generally just kind of promoted from being really good engineers, and then you go get more and more responsibility. But a lot of the times companies forget that they never got any training on it. They are not inherently probably good leaders or good managers just because they haven't done the job before. Not that they're not capable. So another thing we did is we had a leadership coach who came in, and he worked with the team for 6 months, and he was available for unlimited sessions in those 6 months with our leadership team. And they created this enormous kind of chance for all of these guys to learn and develop. And whatever was said in those sessions was all confidential. So there's another thing there where you can actually say, I'm really annoyed about that, I don't know how to manage up or something. You know, you can say whatever, and they will kind of guide you and coach you. And I think we're all the better for it. So it's not just the training, the workshop, the conferences, which we all kind of really encourage. We ask people to find these things. There is no training budget, which is kind of linked to a person, say, you can only attend one conference or something. If it is relevant to you, if it helps you, we will, and the company's always funded us and supported us in developing.
Any other question?
So you mentioned you've kind of got this hybrid world where you've got teams supporting existing world, which isn't fun and exciting and shiny, and then teams working in the fun and exciting shiny world. Out of interest, do you rotate people in and out of the two different teams?
The team that supports our core systems, our current systems, they have the most kind of the business knowledge of those systems, and the rotation in the team is not that often because the people who are building the new teams have got dedicated teams, so they kind of work in that. However, what we do is we run these smaller projects so that the team that is holding the fort is not feeling left out. So we've got project lined up already for them, and the training and development is no different than anybody else. So they actually get trained on all the modern tech as well. They get to play around with it, they get to play around with the technology, and there are projects that are being fed into their backlog, which is actually modern tech, so that they are not just working in the tech that is old.
Okay, last question.
I've actually got two questions. I know it's a bit cheeky. So the first question, so you talked about transparency with the management, and you also talked about there being a change on that level. It feels that, is there other qualities that you feel that the people in charge were able to bring to keep that faith in the engineering team? Because it sounds, a lot of the time when teams fuck up, you tend to go, right, we're going to take away that control. So what is those qualities that you feel that they could have brought? And then, so the other question I wanted to ask is, there was a question asked about what you'd do differently. And since your team sat here, we'd like to hear what they think you could have done differently.
I think that's excellent. Just to answer your first question, I would say that a lot of the times engineering teams, and I know engineers in the room and people involved with engineering, they know we do fuck up a lot. The question then becomes, do you actually go and say to them, we completely fucked this up, didn't see that coming, didn't know what we were thinking, it was completely the wrong decision. That is the difference we have created. We have completely owned it without making any excuses. And we have told them we have not only done that, we have measured the impact, we know what it has affected, we know how to fix it because we've thought it through, and this is how we are going to fix that. And that creates a conversation of trust because they know that you are caring about it more than they could ever do because you know you've fucked up. Okay, so lastly, I would just try and recognize my team here because they're sat all of them. I can see them here, and Agile on the Beach has been great for us, and we bring the teams here just for training and knowledge and community every year. So it's great to be a part of that. So if you guys want to raise your hands, if people want to ask these guys questions, they're probably going to hide their faces now. My team is just like in the front row and the row behind them. Yeah, there you are. Can you wave? Yeah. And also special recognition and acknowledgement to our CEO who's here, traveled all the way down and took the time out of his busy schedule. Kind of shows you the faith that our business has got in us. And so a lot of appreciation for our CEO there. So you want to ask him questions about, why did he put his faith in engineering teams? You can ask him that in break times and other. We'll be hanging around.
Right. Thank you so much, Simi. It was wonderful. And guys, now we have a 15 minutes break, and hopefully you'll be back for the next session.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.